All right. Bruce, I think we had you first on the agenda, and I just had you down for a general update. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, no, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
It's all the plan. He doesn't want to talk to us.
That's funny. The
Why?
IT guy can't connect. Oh, the irony.
It's really low. I heard something, but
Can you hear me now?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, now we can.
All right. So my system has more than one microphone in it, and Zoom auto selected the wrong microphone.
Gotcha.
But thank you, Stephanie. I wanted to bring people up to date on a few items rather. Earlier this spring, we had used our Know Before security training, and we set up a 30-minute video for all employees about phishing. And today, they all received a surprise trick email. And it was intended to appear like it was from Google and that your password had been compromised. And if you clicked on the link, it actually came to a very innocent page that said, careful, you would have gotten caught had you done this otherwise on a legitimate email. So I spent my day today responding to a lot of people who forwarded that email to me one after another, when I was happy to reply to them that they had caught the clues in the email that made them suspicious that it was not a legitimate email. So it turned out to be pretty successful. We still had 2% of the people so far have clicked on the email to move forward. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that when they got to the second web page that they might not have seen more clues had it been a real phishing attempt, and maybe that would have alerted them and caught their eye. But my intention was to send it out on the day that everyone's going to be busy and going too fast, the day that they come back from vacation and maybe just be clicking through things and not thinking. And so it was nice to see that a lot of people stopped and actually realized, no, this is a wrong email. It had an extra O in the word Google, and the links were not to Google websites and things like that, but there were some clues in there, and it was nice to see that people were paying attention. I think that this time of our lives, with what's going on overseas, that the phishing things are really ramping up right now. So just trying to generate overall awareness on a repetitive fashion so that people stay alert instead of get back into a groove and not pay attention as much. But that was really nice to see the type of involvement from the people. We're getting ready to place our MLTI 2.0 order for this year. So after we had refreshed our fleet, the state renewed their MLTI 2.0 component. And this year, they are going to be doing our 9th grade devices. And that will include student and teacher iPads that will come from the state, reimbursed by the state. And a difference in the program last year and this year in comparison to previous years is it's no longer a 4-year lease. It's a one and done. The invoice comes from Apple to us, but the state reimburses us. Apple is gracious enough to delay the invoicing so that the reimbursement from the state will actually arrive before the bill does. So we'll be able to pay the bill with the reimbursement rather than pay the bill and wait to be reimbursed. And we're getting ready to do assessment testings with MEAs and the WIAs at this point. And other than that, our next opportunity is to start collecting devices and get ready for summer and go to camp.
How does that work with the 9th graders? Like, they're getting newer iPads or replacing from last year? How are we doing that?
So, no, so they are getting newer iPads because they're actually going to be ninth generation iPads that have twice the memory of the existing ones. But the iPads that we purchased were on our own and not about the state. And then the state renewed the MLTI program, which essentially gives us reimbursed devices for free, if you will, you know.
Right.
And so we're eligible to sign up for the ninth grade this year. So I signed us up for the ninth grade, and we will get devices for ninth graders. We'll take back the devices that the ninth graders currently have and give them the new devices. And we've been redeploying those devices to other support staff personnel like custodians, bus
Okay.
drivers, kitchen staff. We're ensuring that all the ed techs have devices, getting everyone on a more current device that wasn't included in the fleet refresh. So we're able to recycle those devices to more employees.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just couldn't figure that out. So that's great. Yeah. Awesome. This is a ninth generation? Like, did we buy eighth generation last year? Was that what?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But they don't
It
look
was
different,
actually
right?
2 years ago that we bought them.
2 years. They look the same though, right?
Correct, 100% the same.
Yeah, you'd have to
Like the
really,
same case, everything.
Yeah.
The ones from the state though are coming with a newer keyboard this year than the other keyboards. They have a trackpad on them.
Oh, I like that.
who makes the keyboard?
It's still a Logitech keyboard, but Logitech's latest generation of the keyboard has a trackpad built in.
Ah, okay. Does that mean like other districts around the state are also using the keyboard option now?
Yes, those are districts that are participating in MLTI
Yeah,
choosing the iPad offering.
yeah,
There are
right.
still more than one offering. You can choose a Windows offering, a Chromebook offering, or the iPad offering. And of course, in the iPad world, you could be choosing a laptop offering versus the iPad offering, but the state will only reimburse you to the cost of the iPad. So
Oh.
anything you choose above and beyond that becomes on you.
And they reimburse iPad with the keyboard?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And the crayon.
And the crayon, okay. Yep. I'm sorry to be nitpicky. And the bag too? Do they reimburse for the bag too?
No, they are not giving us bags anymore, but we bought bags.
Yeah, okay.
We were able to bulk a lot of bags at the beginning of the pandemic in order to get devices traveling home at the younger grade levels, because we didn't have bags for all the grade levels
Yeah,
back then. Because prior to the pandemic, the K-5 devices never traveled.
right.
So when the pandemic occurred and we had to start sending devices home, we bought all new bags for everyone.
Will that change the fact that they took them home? Will that change what teachers and staff do now with K-5 students in terms of now bringing the devices home or not?
So the devices K-5 currently are not traveling at this stage now that we're back in full session.
Okay.
And how are we standing on the hotspots, people who
Hmm.
need the hotspots? What's going to happen with that over the summer? And
So currently we are using a state-sponsored hotspot program where we get reimbursed by the state for those. And we currently have, I actually asked this last week because we were checking to make sure we still had plenty for the remainder of the school year. We have 35 hotspots out right now. And the intention is to collect those that won't be needed for summer school type activities so that we have them back over the summer. We have a lot of lost, missing, can't find, battery dead type scenarios. So we're getting together with department heads to determine who will still need schooling during the summertime. And we'll leave those hotspots out, but for those that won't be keeping their iPad for the summer, we'll be collecting those hotspots back.
What kind of speeds do they get at home with the hotspots?
Well, of course, that's gonna vary by how great their signal is, for those that are in town are eligible to get 5G at this point, and those are speeds up over 100 megasecond. But for the most part, I would say that people are getting 20
I think
megs per second plus off a hotspot.
Yeah, I mean, a 20 plus usually means you can do just about anything you want.
Correct.
Well, yeah.
A high end, and not that they're used for Netflix, although they might be, but
Right.
like a high end Netflix movie is about 4 meg per second.
Yeah. Yep.
So in comparison.
I did a screen speed test in my house the other day, and I got like 240 megabits per second. I've never seen it that fast before. And
So
that's,
you have Spectrum.
yeah, I mean, it just means that the system just gets,
So Spectrum has recently increased their bandwidth. I have Spectrum at home as well. We've gone from 100 to 200. And if you go to their website, you can sign up for 400 if you want.
Yeah.
But I think 200 is certainly ample for your average household.
Yeah. 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 It's good.
Other than that, I have nothing else, Stephanie.
All
Carol.
right.
Thank you. Thanks for being.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You caught any fish yet?
I have yet to go. The campground isn't open yet.
Okay.
My boat's still in storage. The gentleman that lets me store my boat in his barn has been at Myrtle Beach, so I'm hoping this week I get my boat. And then the
Enjoy.
fish stories will start next meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
You already told us one this meeting with the Google fishing. You did go
Yeah, there you
fishing
go.
today.
I caught 11 fish. 2%, 11 people clicked on it. So yeah, I caught 11 fish today.
There you go.
So the curriculum portion of the meeting is, there's a couple of things that I want to review, and this was part of why we didn't meet for the past 2 months at least. We did a lot of research and viewing and vetting of materials. So we did a process for grades 6 through 8 for math, and then we did a process for grades K through 5 for literacy. Both of these are in response to program materials that are being eliminated as a result of companies making changes. So the Go Math materials that we were using, we got a notification that as of this summer, they would no longer be available. So the company gave us a couple of options, as they have like a phase out program so that you can phase out of the Go Math program and it looks somewhat similar, and then phase into their new Into Math program. And then of course we had the conversation about, if we're going to do that, we might as well do a full review and really get what we want to get, as opposed to just getting whatever a company is going to be suggesting.
You call it Into Math?
What's that?
It's called Into Math.
Into Math was the program that the same company that we were using was going to offer us.
Yeah.
And we decided not to go that route. We wanted to just do our own research. So the 6 through 8 group used the same research that we started the K-5 math process with, which was, I think, 2 years back. It was toward the end of the spring of 2020, where we were doing our selection process for those materials. Thank goodness the research hasn't changed. And we were able to develop all of our look-fors based on that same research. So that process actually didn't take too long. We just revised it and made sure that it was really geared more for middle school and not so much elementary school. But most of the look-fors were really around the math practices and the instruction. So most of them were the same. We reviewed Envision Math, which is a Pearson product. We reviewed Ready Classroom Math, which is the program that we recently implemented in K-5. And we reviewed Illustrative Math, which is a very highly rated math program that's been out for a few years now. All three of those programs have received green light ratings from Ed Reports, which is one of the reports that we look at. Once we have our research, we take a look at reviews and reports, and Ed Reports is a great resource to look at how are these materials rated by, and they're very thoroughly vetted and reviewed. We've actually had one of our principals on one of the vetting teams, so she's been able to talk with us about the process. But it looks at reliability of the materials. It looks at the alignment with Common Core. It looks at the usability of the materials, and all three rated really well. So we did our review, and we found that one rated much more highly than the other two in nearly all of the areas, and that was Ready Classroom. I think the teachers were a little hesitant at first because they thought, what if the kids are really sick of it by the time they get to middle school? They've used the same program in K-5, but we talked through the pros and cons of that. I think obviously one of the pros is the familiarity with the language of instruction and the familiarity with the routines. And that's really one of the best parts of that math program are the structured routines that the kids become very familiar with. It also includes, it's called a cube. So it includes an assessment that teachers can pull a prerequisite report and learn how to group their students to provide the lessons. And it also comes with a online practice tool, which we were using in the middle school. We were using a different online practice tool. We were using IXL for grades 7 and 8 and a program called Alex for grade 6. So we've also made the agreement that we don't need those excess materials. We can just use the digital tool that's already tied directly in with the instruction and provides data in this iReady source. So it's really one complete package. And by going with this package, we can eliminate some of the ancillary stuff that's not going to be necessary, hopefully. The conversation with the 6-8 team was really, it was great. They reflected on what are the needs of the students and, what is our data showing us? And we just had a really honest conversation that illustrative math looks like a great program if we're teaching to the middle. If all of our kids come into 6th grade and they're ready for 6th grade material, that would be great. Same with 7th grade. If they're all ready to move on from 6th grade to 7th grade and they're all in the same place, that would be wonderful. That's just not our reality. I don't think that's the reality of most schools, especially after the pandemic. The reality is our students need differentiation. And that was one of the pieces that the group identified, that really the only program that we looked at that does differentiation well for our students is Ready Classroom. And that's part of why we went with that in grades K-5 as well. So we're pretty excited. We'll be fully implementing. We're actually going to do a 6-year agreement with the company. So we're not planning to do a pilot year. We're just going to go all in. I'm familiar with what the program is because we fully implemented in grades K-5. This is our first full year implementation, and I continue to be very pleased with the results. I think we're going to see the same with middle school. And the teachers felt like, you know what, if I don't have an out, I'm going to be much more invested. So they agreed that we're going to do, it's less expensive if you can do a 6-year agreement. And because we're using ESSER COVID related funding, because anything math or literacy supports, we can use some of that funding for. It was a much better deal to pay the upfront cost. I think it's around $76,000, including professional development for the first year. And that $76,000 covers all 6 years of our replaceable consumable math texts that kids use. It includes the teacher texts. It includes full access to everything that's available in the online digital component, including the assessments, including the student practice, the games. And also the teachers have access to the teacher toolbox in grades K through 8. So they have access to basically every teacher manual, at least a digital version.
Are the
Wow, that's
resources-
amazing.
Yeah.
the resources online, in text, or both?
Both. We're getting, so you can just purchase an online, you know, if in the future we're really strapped for cash, we could just purchase everything online. And if teachers are familiar enough and, you know, the teacher guides change for some reason and we can't purchase new ones, everything is online. But we purchased the consumables as well for students to use, which is, I don't have one right in front of me. I'm sure I have one here in my office because I'm full to the brim with sample materials right now. But it looks sort of like a workbook. It's like a math book and a workbook combined, and students can write their answers directly into those workbooks. That's not necessary. Teachers could go on and print out a PDF and make photocopies. So part of your purchase is the licensing of all of those materials. But that's a lot of extra work on the teacher. And for an initial implementation, we want things to go really smoothly. We want them to have access for that. And it's not a huge cost. It's actually cheaper for us to have the consumables and have students using the Ready Classroom practice application than it is to continue to purchase the ALEX and the IXL licensing and use a program like Go Math that we were using. So we're going to see a savings from this.
Because
I
I'm
think you guys
curious,
were able to have a good conversation. I'm sure that was refreshing to talk about curriculum and math programs versus some of the other things you had to deal with. And it's great that we're sort of turning the corner on some of those conversations. I'm curious about the differentiation part though. And I agree that for our district, that makes a lot of sense. But in reality, how much time do you feel like the teachers actually have to do the differentiation? Because it takes additional time to do that and additional prep. And do you feel like they're able to do that effectively with this program?
I think they will. It's going to look a little bit different in middle school because they only have, I think, 49 minutes with the students, whereas you might have 75 minutes in an elementary school, but there's a recognition of that with how the program is written as well. I think what the teachers aren't necessarily used to is the sort of like the centers approach where students rotate through, and some students might work with the teacher at their desk, and some students might be working playing a math game at a center, and some might be practicing on their iPads through the iReady practice window. And that's definitely a K-5 elementary style approach, but that approach is brought into the middle school because that's where the differentiation is happening. The teachers are running a prerequisite report. They're trained in that. So when the students do an initial screening, all of that data is used routinely throughout the year to pull a prerequisite report to see where are the students in this skill, because the ones that might be high in one skill, by the next 3 lessons, they might be low in a different skill when you're covering a different type of lesson. So they're continuously grouped and regrouped. But the teachers were really open to that type of an approach. And in fact, one group of 7th grade teachers said they were trying out some of the online games and they were laughing and having a good time while they were doing the review. So they thought it would be really engaging for the students and felt like it would be doable. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve again to try to fit this into, you know, how does this look with a middle school schedule? But I definitely have high hopes for it.
Yeah, I think the centers are a good way to approach the differentiation. The other way of doing it, of course, is to track students and put them into different math levels within the grade. I don't know if you've thought about that or if that's something that would be possible or needed at this point.
We have had lots of conversations about that. One of the reasons it gets tricky to do that at middle school is when you do that for math, it by default does that for all other subjects. And it doesn't always mean, you know, a student might have a strength in math and a weakness in English. And then you start grouping kids together and you're making the assumption that, you know, the kids that do well in math are going to do well in everything. And that's not always the case. So that gets a little tricky.
The other way of doing it, of course, is to have all the math classes happen at the same time, but I'm sure that would create problems with staffing, right?
Yeah, I think that would be challenging. Yeah.
Do you think our students are comfortable with digital or book, or prefer one over the other?
They're comfortable with digital, but I think so. The Go Math program, I honestly didn't quite realize this. I assumed that there was a book that went with it. Our Go Math program in middle school was completely digital. There was no consumable for students and no textbook. So everything that teachers were using was online. One of the reasons I like the consumable is because I don't think that kids, and maybe they're not looking back anyways, but a consumable is all bound together. So if you needed to look back at a previous chapter that you've worked on, it's still all right there. That becomes trickier to do in a digital world. I don't think our students are quite as fluent with that. And then certainly like the random papers that get stuffed into a backpack, those never get, well, maybe a very organized student collates all of those and puts them into a binder, but I don't think most students do. I know my young ones certainly do not. They're all stuffed in the bottom of the backpack. But one thing I do want to mention, and speaking of my kids just reminded me of this. So in K-5, we've been implementing this program. This is the first full year of full implementation. When my kids come home from school, we have a little easel in the living room that they like to play with, and they're playing math. They're playing school, but they're playing math. They're writing problems and they're asking each other, now, how did you get to that? Now, how are you solving that? And those are the types of routines that are embedded into this math program that I think are really exciting. And that's what our teachers were looking for as well. They want those opportunities for kids to have discourse around math and deepen that understanding as opposed to rote memorization.
Okay, good.
Any other questions about math for 6-8? All right, well, I will jump into K-5, the literacy review. This is also a result of being told that our program materials that were through Pearson for Reading Street would be discontinued by the fall of 2023. So we had a little bit of a heads up this time, but it does still mean we've got to scramble and make some decisions. We started this process with our principals. We had some conversation, our K-5 principals, we had conversations around what are our major look-fors, because our principals are the ones that are really supporting the implementation. So I wanted to make sure that they're all really invested in the process. So this isn't a process where we make a purchase and then, you know, teachers struggle, but principals might not quite know how to support them because maybe they weren't part of the process to begin with. So I really wanted to make sure that they were all truly invested. And they're quite invested with their literacy and math data anyways, because they have lots of conversations at the school level about those. Our look-fors, we really identified strong foundational literacy skills, particularly in grades K2, but we really wanted to see that strand pulled all the way through K5. We wanted to make sure that we found a highly developed, structured literacy program that's based on the science of reading. We were very committed to that. We read several articles that supported structured literacy. And we also did a little bit of research through Ed Reports and found some of those green lighted programs. And interestingly, we weren't super happy with some of those green lighted programs. So we initially looked at Into Reading, which in 6 through 8, we had looked at Into Math as well. So we looked at Into Reading for K-5. We looked at a program called Wonders, which has actually not been rated yet. They'll probably get the green light rating, but their 2021 version was rated and then they've upgraded. So this is what companies are doing right now. They keep upgrading their materials so that, you know, schools have to continue to buy into them, which is really problematic. So we also looked at Ready classroom reading, which is called magnetic reading. So sort of like Ready Classroom Math and iReady, which we've purchased for now K-8 for math. They have a reading component as well. And we were really excited about that because we thought things are going great in math. So let's see what they have to offer for reading. So we had those three that we were initially taking a look at. And I had several teachers reach out to me and say, I'm seeing a lot of workbook style approach and I'm really nervous, or I'm seeing a lot of what we've been using in the past, which is it's almost like resource overload for ELA. When you think of ELA, and it is a lot of stuff. It's listening and speaking, it's grammar, it's reading, it's writing, it's all of the components that go along with all of those pieces, which is, I mean, that's pages and pages just of I can statements alone. So there is a lot that goes into it, but sometimes these programs can be really overwhelming. So teachers started to get a little nervous and several of them reached out. One of them said, how come the district isn't looking at any of these 4 programs that are listed in the article about structured literacy programs? And I had a whole bunch of reasons for that. For 2 of the programs, they were dated later, or earlier, I guess. One was from 2017 and one was from 2015. And that makes me really nervous given what the district is going through with some of these other programs being discontinued. I don't want to look at something that's considered older at this point. And one of them didn't have a great rating. It was yellow. It wasn't red, but it was yellow. And we're comparing it to some of these other programs that have fully green ratings. And another one of the programs was a totally different philosophical shift. It's a wonderful program. St. George has used it for years. It's expeditionary learning. But I was not comfortable, and neither was the team of principals, in doing a full philosophical shift for our teachers when we're just coming out of a pandemic. The timing just did not feel quite right for that. So I actually reached out to the company that they don't sell expeditionary learning because it's an open resource. They help to get it into schools. I reached out to them and I said, here's my dilemma. Here's what I'm trying to get teachers interested in and having them vet and rate. And here's the article. And the person said, well, bookworms is in that article. Have you looked at bookworms? And I said, well, we didn't because it was from 2017 and I'm really nervous. And I, explained what's happened to the district. And she said, I think it's worth your time to look at bookworms. And so we did. And we really, really liked bookworms. Bookworms is 265 whole books. There is no reading anthology. It's 265 books that students are going to read from K through grade 5. And they're going to cover all of the reading and writing and listening, speaking, and language arts standards through 3 blocks throughout the day. And they're 3 45-minute blocks. One is an English language arts block. It's called the ELA block. One is a shared reading block. And the third is called the DI block. And that is for differentiated instruction. The differentiated instruction might be around phonemic awareness, digraphs and blends, any of those early reading skills that are really, really important. We say that kids need to be exposed to thousands and thousands of words before grade 3 to be readers. This is what this program does. There's word study embedded into it. It's no frills. It does not have a digital component. There's not a flashy online assessment that kids are going to take that, we then have a prerequisite report to use. We looked at that. We looked at that through Ready Reading, and we did not like that as much as we liked Bookworms and its approach to really providing students with real texts and instruction that is consistent and predictable and that works. So my one concern about that was, again, it was a program from 2017 and it did not get the green Ed Reports rating, but they're actually being re-rated right now. Their new rating should come out any day. They're expecting to be fully green because they have all of the efficacy data. And it's a new version coming out for the fall of 2022. So we are planning to pilot bookworms next year.
How do you do that again, the pilot?
The pilot, we're going to actually figure that out tomorrow with the K-5 principals. I have several scenarios. I have one teacher piloting per grade level. We could do 2 teachers piloting per grade level. We could do full district pilot of the materials. So I have several different iterations that we can look at, and we can certainly do any variations of those. This program does have a cost to piloting. Sometimes programs don't have a cost, although I think given how many materials come with ELA programs, I think any would probably have a cost to them. But basically the cost is you're buying the books, because the books, I mean, that's not something that you can use and then send back. It's sort of like you would get a package of books from Scholastic. You're getting copies of books for your class to use so that students can have actual book in their hands while you're doing your classwork. So that's the biggest part of the purchase, and all of the funding for this, you won't see any of this as a general budget impact. This is all through ESSER related funding.
Wow.
I love the idea of kids having books in their hands. I've never really thought that everything should be digital, because we don't know. We just don't know. But there's something special about kids having a book. They feel it, there's an aroma to a book. I mean, it's a treasure that I've seen, for 50+ years, seen kids' reactions when they get a book. And it's magical. They never forget it.
I know one complaint that we've had with Ready Classroom is I'm going to grab one of these just so I can show you. It's the binding. And so this is the same binding. This is just a sample of what the reading text looks like, but this is the binding for a kindergartner. So when it's reading material and it's in a bound anthology, this is really difficult for kindergartners who are just learning how to hold a pencil and just learning how to write. Even when it's flat on their desk, this is really difficult for them to write on. So that's always a kindergarten complaint. And then, if they have to hold it and they have to flip the pages to whatever you're reading in the anthology, that all sort of adds an extra layer to reading that teachers have to think about when they're providing instruction. Whereas if you've got the book, you're not flipping any pages or trying to fold them a certain way so it's easier for the student to use. It's a book. So we're pretty excited about that. It's the author of these materials is Dr. Sharon Walpole. She works for the University of Delaware. She wrote this for Open Up Resources. It's freely available. You don't have to buy the student consumables and the teacher manual. You can just strictly use them online. That's not our plan. We're planning to purchase the teacher manuals and the student materials because it makes it easier. But she wanted these materials to be readily available for anybody who wants to use them, because they are written with the science of reading in mind. And she is an instructor of reading processes. She has great videos online. Some of our teachers who are part of the vetting process, one of them is a Title I teacher at South School, and she has just finished her CAS in reading, or her master's in reading and strategy. So she's looked really at all of the technical aspects of the different programs, and she's really pretty excited about what this can bring to the general ed classroom. We always talk about supports for students and Title I and extra practice programs for students, but we really need a strong core. We're not going to need all that extra if we have a really strong foundation for these kids. So that's my hope.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. It all sounds fantastic. And I particularly like, Stephanie, how the process that you always use when you're going through things like this. in terms of involving teachers in the process and principals and getting consensus on things. I mean, it's the right way to do it for so many reasons.
The teacher said, if you pilot any of those other ones, don't reach out to me. If you pilot bookworms, let me know.
That's
So,
a big statement.
pretty clear which one they preferred.
Now, I'm gonna, just from a bigger, sort of like vantage point, because it's our job as school board members to talk about these things. I'm going to say something that's pretty much counter to what Carol just said, and that is that why not go digital for all these books? Why not cut down trees, and modeling that? And kids are obviously digital natives, and and that sort of thing. And it's a direction that we either take now or in the future, or maybe never. Maybe there is a value to holding a book as a printed document instead of on your iPad. But I just want to have that discussion, because it is our job as school board members to look at that and say, how do we want to go with everything that we do instruction on, because our students are digital natives and we're one-to-one.
Yeah. I don't know that the research is totally out there yet. I think someday it will come, but I think your brain works differently with technology than it does interacting with people, and then it does interacting with print material. And I really don't have any research to back that up. It's just my theory of working in the classroom, of watching my own children. One of the things that I love about bookworms is it encourages didactic reading and dialogic reading, where there's a conversation about what's happening on the pages, so that there's really a deeper understanding for students. And sometimes our kids don't get that. I'm thinking about, if you see them out and about at the grocery store and they're sitting in the carriage and they've got a screen in front of their face as opposed to looking at a book, they might have that at home as well. There's lots of access to screens for our students. I don't know that there's as much access to books. And don't get me wrong, technology is great. It's probably one of the reasons why women are able to work nowadays, the technology at home that makes home life so much easier. So I'm a proponent of technology, but I do think it changes the way that we think and how we interact with each other. So I don't want to lose sight of the importance of making sure that there's a balance.
Are you saying?
Also, we don't have to cut down trees to have paper, because we can grow hemp or we can grow bamboo. And those two things grow fast, and they're not a hazard to our forestation. So I think we live in a hybrid world, and I just think we move slowly, and then sometimes we speed up. And I think we're in that process where we're kind of hip hopping around to see where we want to be eventually.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's really interesting because, first of all, we're all older humans. We have to know that, we're not young and digital natives and grew up with a screen. There's a difference to us older humans, I think, in terms of holding something like a book in our hands, which may be permanently valuable to humans. 2,000 years from now, people want to hold a book when they read a novel, and they want to hold their tablet when they read a newspaper. Who knows, right? So I'm just saying, from our point of view as a school board, because we really trust you and yours, our staff, to pick the right materials for our kids. Brad probably knows more than I do about stuff because he's an educator, but to me, I just completely trust you, and I don't have any concerns about it, right? So when I think of anything that is a concern of me is perhaps that part, but I'm really open to the evidence, the science, as it shows us over time, that there is an interactive feature of holding something like, especially maybe fiction, I don't know, that gives a person more, a richer experience than seeing it on the screen, or there's no difference at all. For me as a consumer, Sometimes I read a paper book, but most of the time I read something, book or everything on my iPad. It's just the way I am, right? So, but I still could be a minority, which is true for hundreds of years, that like, no, just like most people want to hold a novel in their hands. And as you said, Carol, they want to smell the paper. Great, if that's the case, that's the case. I just think that we as a district need to be aware of it because kids are digital natives and we do have one-to-one devices.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I'll use one example. Our NUIA, now that NUIA is our MEA, they want to try to sell us a whole bunch more tools. And there's a math tool called the NUIA Accelerator. And it was presented to curriculum directors across the state. And some were like, oh, this looks great. It's basically an online assessment, and students are answering things through the assessment. It's quite similar, I think, to what we use IXL and ALEX for, like in the middle school. It's online practice. It's meant as a formative way that teachers can go in and they can see some additional assessment data. We assess students so much. We have that information. We have that data. I honestly think most districts are. I can't imagine why districts need another data point. What we don't have is instruction. Those aren't instructional tools. They're assessment related tools. And I don't know that our kids are really at a place where they're ready to receive online instruction. Our students struggled last year with Edmentum and the Calvert platform. Unless they had a lot of support with their parents or somebody in person that could really guide them through that instruction. We have some high school students that are taking some of their courses that they need to make up credits this year through Edmentum, and they're having, varied degrees of success. But that's a skill in itself, is learning to receive instruction through a platform. And I'm not so sure that there's a lot of really well-developed platforms that deliver instruction that students aren't just swiping and clicking through. So that might be an area in the future that's a lot more developed, but I haven't seen a lot of great instruction, and that's what we need in reading. And that's really what we need from these math routines as well. Granted, our math program has more of a digital component. It's the instructional routines that happen in the classroom that are what we need in this district. The technology is a tool. It's a great supportive tool. And I am so glad that we have it for our assessment data and that prerequisite report that we can pull in math. I think that's part of it, but it's certainly not the whole piece. And it's the instruction that we're looking to improve.
Yeah, and please don't get me wrong, because I agree with everything you just said. I'm not saying that about our one-to-one devices. It's just materials, and things like that may prove to be very effective and also cost-effective,
Right.
For us to be utilizing. But nothing beats a hug, right? No matter what kind of technology you have, nothing beats a hug, meaning personal connection. So I completely agree with the teacher-student and student-to-student interactions of learning.
And I think with both of these programs, Lauren, I think we could go paperless in the future, because once we purchase the books aren't going anyplace.
Yep.
And maybe we could purchase the books online at some point as well. But in terms of the teacher materials, where teachers go to access or print things off, we could do that in the future if we really needed to.
Okay.
And I would say that flexibility is going to be really key in light of the fact that we don't really know how technology is shaping young children's brains really well. I mean, everyone born after 1995 really grew up in this digital generation, and their brains are different. They have a different way of processing information. They have a different fluency with the technology. And as educators, we're sort of playing catch up as to how they are learning based in the digital world. So I think that flexibility and being able to sort of make decisions as we go to see what type of media, what type of material is to students in certain ways, is that flexibility is going to be really important.
Are you saying we should teach by TikTok?
I think TikTok actually is a great way of incorporating some lessons, because it engages students right away. In fact, my son, who's a junior at college actually has TikTok assignments occasionally in his anthropology
Really?
classes, where he
Wow.
has to create a TikTok to sort of discuss a certain aspect of something that he's working in this anthropology class. So it's happening in all these different levels, and I think, you know, we have to find ways to engage this generation of students, and TikTok is one of those medias as much as anything else.
That's incredible. That's the first time I've heard of that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and TikTok is just getting bought for $44 million
No,
by
no,
Elon Musk.
No, that's Twitter.
That's Twitter.
Oh, that's
That's
Twitter.
Twitter.
That's right.
Mm.
My bad.
TikTok is actually a Chinese company, which is going to be different.
My husband's on TikTok all the time.
It's great if you like watching kittens.
Yeah, well, he likes watching people play musical instruments that are amazing.
Well, this is an actually important discussion that we need to keep having. Again, from this big vision point of view, is that kids and experiences online are maybe shrinking in a time-wise way, because when you go from, let's say, you know, a nonfiction book to YouTube episodes, your attention span is down to like 7 minutes, right? But when you go from that to TikTok, I mean, it's a minute, right? Aren't TikToks like a minute? And so it's an attention span thing that I would think teachers, maybe at the middle school and high school level, have to deal with.
Yes.
Right? I mean, because like if we're 100 years ago and students have books and they're reading from that, and that's in school, I mean, it's all the same. But if in school now you've got, you know, traditional sort of lessons and students are learning stuff, but in their personal life, they're like watching 60-second things constantly all the time. It trains your mind differently. And I find it fascinating, but I also wonder if it's difficult for teachers because of that.
Yeah, actually, and this is an interesting point, Ron. It's not just in the last few years, but even when I was taking education classes, I had a professor that Sesame Street was a terrible thing because classroom teachers could not keep up with the Sesame Street puppets and songs and routines and multimedia and all the different entertaining facets of learning the ABCs.
Yeah.
So if you get accustomed to Sesame Street, how can classroom teachers adapt? And I think it's gone exponentially in that direction since then.
Interesting.
So it is something that I think is shaping young children's minds, something that educators have to be aware of, because, you know, they are in this digital world when they go home on their iPads or on their laptops or in TVs or wherever they may be, in TikTok. And then they go into a classroom, and a classroom teacher can't do that. It's not possible for them to have that same level of stimuli. So we have to be aware, and we have to be fluent of these different ways that media is impacting the neural networks that are developing in our children's brains. And I'm sure you're seeing it in your work. And I'm sure there are impacts of the digital age and what you do as a social worker and a counselor. And we're certainly seeing it in other areas as well. So that's, I think, adaptivity and flexibility is more important than ever. Those learning stations that Stephanie was talking about, that helps to some extent. That differentiation helps a lot. And having these programs that can sort of reach a broad range of interests and broad range of learning abilities, and that's going to be important. But it's probably more challenging to be a teacher now than ever before because of these outside media impacts.
You would think, absolutely. Because we talk about habits of success, and this is like habits of learning. How do you learn something? Well, I go to TikTok now to learn it. So I get 20 TikToks that I look at to sort of understand something, whereas someone like me goes to YouTube only to learn something, and maybe 2 of them. But Stephanie, I mean, do you think that our staff are experiencing any sort of like challenges in what we're talking about here for how students are consuming things outside of school?
I think so. I think a lot of it, so we have the habit for success of perseverance. that perseverance and stamina to stick with something, because you don't have to do that in the digital world. You don't want to look at it, you swipe and go someplace else, or pick a different video. There's I think, again, it goes back to that brain research that I haven't really seen a lot of. I think it's probably either starting or might be out there a little bit. There's been a couple of really good documentaries about students and the effects of screens. Screenagers is one of them.
Teenagers.
Screenagers, yep. There's a follow-up to that as well, which is it's all about their social emotional impact from technology, being on their phones all the time, sort of that social stress of all of that. It's that instant gratification piece. A lot of that addiction, that phone addiction, comes from getting that instant gratification. And you can't compete with that in the classroom. So you really have to work on stamina and productive struggle. And a lot of those pieces are built into some of this programming. The productive struggle piece is really a focus of the math. You have to struggle and persevere through a problem instead of, it's not plug and chug. You've got to figure it out. That's how your brain starts to make those new connections. You can't just be told the process or the answer. You have to really think through that so that those connections in your brain can develop.
Yeah, and I still worry about blue light stress on vision. We're learning more and more about that every day. And the proliferation of blue light glasses, even putting them out for 2-year-olds, because 2-year-olds are spending so much screen time. And just watch in a restaurant or a grocery store and you see that blue light flooding the kid's face. And so, I think just having a little bit of a break with the book open in front of you, you're not getting any blue light from that. And I think it's just, we have to keep an eye on how things are going and where we want them to be favorable for our kids.
Well, the thing about learning is, like, now with the options, don't we actually have to teach our kids to utilize different options? Like, as an example, I am hungry for news about Ukraine all the time. So if I get a free moment, I go to YouTube and I watch 2 or 3 minute, or maybe 4-minute explanations by experts about what's going on in Ukraine. I often don't want 20-minute explanations, but when I want one, I go to it or I read it if I want a longer explanation. So, it's like, it's not A or B, right? It's
right, it's both.
How students will always, as humans, always be learning and utilizing their technology and their books to do that.
And you can't pick up the Free Press or Village Soup and get anything on Ukraine. So you have to go somewhere where the source is. And I think we're teaching our kids that there are multiple places they can go. And I'm really loving that.
But there's also multiple depths of information.
Yes.
And it's okay. We don't want to say, as older people, like, oh, TikTok is wrong. Don't do that. That's wrong. We want to say, like, use that and use this and use that over there, because it all grows your mind, right?
Right.
Well, and it's also our role to ensure that they're well-versed in all these other aspects as they go on to secondary school, and those processes are already in place. And are we throwing them in the middle of the lake without a life jacket, or are we sending them there prepared as well?
No,
Yeah.
so right. That's so right. Yeah, absolutely. So right.
And you're 100% right on, Lauren, when you say we as a board need to keep talking about this.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it enough. We talk about it in committees, but we don't talk about it enough as a whole board. And I think we need to keep plugging in.
It certainly could be a certain workshop topic in the future.
I think that would be great.
To understand together, where are our kids? Where are they at in terms of their learning styles? That includes all these things that all of us never could have imagined. I never could have imagined TikTok. Wasn't like it, a few years ago, it wasn't on my radar that would be something that is like, Brad, you said your son, a junior in college, has been being told, use TikTok to do an assignment. Wow, right? That's amazing. So, yeah.
And it's tricky sometimes for teachers or professors to keep up with all this stuff. But I think if we want to continue to engage the students that we're teaching, we have to speak their language.
It's incredible because as a college professor thing I do, I mean, I want students to be proficient in doing a keynote presentation in a really professional way. That's still old school, you know, that's old school.
By PowerPoint.
Yeah.
That's by PowerPoint.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Stephanie. I think it's all great work you're doing. I particularly love the inclusiveness of your process. Because I remember reading a long time ago when I got on a school board is that there are two reasons why teachers feel great about their jobs. One is certainly paying benefits. The other is to feel like you're part of something and your voice matters, your opinion matters, you're part of making decisions and moving forward. So I really, really appreciate that process that you do.
Yeah, I do too, because I've been missing working with the teachers. So it's been very refreshing. It's been
Oh my
great.
God, right. Yeah.
Do you have anything else for us, Stephanie? We should set our next meeting.
Yes, we should decide when we're going to meet again and if there's any topics that you guys would like to see on the agenda.
I got a big one. So should we have any sort of CTE pathway or academy or anything at our high school? Should we, I mean, certainly students do it, you know, and I know they love it. And I know that our new building and everything we have there is just crazy good. But it's like, I don't know if like we should or must or should think about raising all pathways to a recognized level. I know that like our academies right now, STEM or liberal arts, is you get that, what do you call it when you graduate?
An endorsement.
An endorsement, right?
Yeah.
So that may mean something that we can't get from something else. But, you know, like people who go from high school into a service, like Police Academy or Naval Academy or Castine, what's that called?
Maine Maritime.
Yeah, thank you. You know, should that be a recognized something in high school? Because one of the things that students get out of that is the feeling of what I do and what I love doing matters just as much as anyone else's. And so I would like us in this committee to talk about that along with Jesse and whoever else. And if it turns out that what we have now is exactly what we should keep, I'm fine with that. I want to analyze that together, because I think I strongly believe it really matters that students feel like if I'm going into the Navy, that matters just as much as my friend who's going into going into college for med school. There should be no differentiation of human value based on your pathway, you know, what you love doing.
Yeah. I can plan to invite Jesse next time. He does have the framework for a CTE pathway. That was the goal, was to complete that this
Great.
year. I don't know. I honestly don't know if we will get there or not, because it takes coordination with MCST.
Yeah.
And I know this just was not a year that any of us really expected,
No.
and everyone's sort of getting their feet back under them. But I think it would be great to have Jesse be part of this meeting and talk about what's some of the vision for any of the other pathways, because we've talked about like a generalist pathway, you know, that kids maybe don't have to pick a specific, maybe they're just not sure. We've talked about having a STEM pathway and a liberal arts pathway that's really accessible by any student, not just somebody who's, you know, wanting to pursue some of the AP and honors courses. But you know, we haven't really gotten very far with those conversations, and it might be a really good conversation for this group to think about, because that's really the next step, is further developing those pathways and then seeing how the curriculum work is going to feed into that. And I will share publicly for the first time, I am pursuing my doctoral degree.
Whoa.
And
Wow.
that's actually going to be my problem of practice, is pathways for high school students. So that's going to be a very major focus.
Good.
I'll be working
We
on.
talked also about fine arts, and where are we on that?
Wait. Let me just say, A, congratulations on doing that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
B, we benefit if your, you know, focus is, you know, high school pathway. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Sorry,
Um,
I missed that, Stephanie. Could you repeat that? I cut out I
Oh,
froze for 1
sure.
second. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I am pursuing my doctoral degree, and the problem of practice that I will be working on is pathways for high school students.
That's great.
Yeah. So the fine arts, Carol, is through the liberal arts. There's 3 different categories. There's the humanities, the culture studies, and then there's the arts, which could
Okay.
include fine arts or theater or, whatever a student.
Okay.
really is
I
looking
was not aware of that, but so on the diploma, the endorsement would have like a hyphen and then their particular.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. And maybe I'm a little dumb here, but CTE means, well, I hate all these initials because I don't know what they are. What is CTE? Construction technology?
No,
Career technology exploration.
thank you. It's MCST. Midco School. of
Okay.
Technology.
Okay, I'd never heard that referred to as CTE.
Yeah, I think it's more the official terminology these days of, not Voc Tech School or regional thing or that, it's CTE. And our particular school is called MCST or Midco School of Technology,
Right.
but the curriculum is CTE. And Steph,
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but is that correct?
Yeah.
Maybe mention that, Lauren, in, when you talk about MCST, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who doesn't know what those 3 letters mean.
Okay, yep.
We need a chart,
New glossary.
all the letter things, and so we can go, oh, okay, that's that.
Yep, right.
I still need a paper copy.
Yeah.
So should we meet on the 4th Monday then in May? It looks like that would be the 23rd.
Sure.
Okay. And is 3:15 best for you, Brad?
Yeah, I appreciated that. That allows me to pick up my son at Oceanside Middle School and get back in time for the meeting. So 3:15 is great.
All right.
Right. Great. I asked Rebecca if she wanted to be on this committee. She's interested, but she can't. The timing doesn't work for her. So anyway, just for you all to know that we do have one person missing, but anyway, we're great as we are. So
Okay.
We are awesome together, as you like to say.
we're awesome together. We are really that. Yes, absolutely.
So are we in person for workshop this week?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We are. Oh, and we have negotiations tomorrow.
Yes, that's
4:30.
not in person, though, that's Zoom.
That's Zoom. You should be getting an email from
I did.
Pete about,
Oh, no.
From Peter, yeah, the 3:30 meeting before.
what's that again? What?
I'm sorry, I think he's offering a 3:30 meeting before our 4:30 meeting.
Oh, a 3:30 meeting. Ooh, yeah.
Can't do that.
That's a tough one. But anyway, okay, I'll check my email too. Yeah.
You know.
So Bruce and Stephanie, great to see you guys as always.
Good
All
to
right.
see
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, good work on catching your 11 fish.
Very crafty, very crafty. Good lure.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. See ya.
Thank you.